Hey, hi there, guys. Welcome back to another episode. Warren here. So, today, before I get started, how are you guys doing out there? If you're new here, welcome. Thanks for stopping by, giving us a listening ear. And if you're returning, as they say here in the Highlands, welcome back, Kama Aina. All right? Welcome back to the Aina. But today, I want to talk about a topic that I think is pretty near and dear to all of our hearts in some way. And because we have experienced it, I think, and that is the often called several things. You probably heard it as the Messiah complex, the Savior complex, or the hero complex. Whichever way you've heard it, it is the same. And what it is a psychological phenomenon where a person is just wired to think that they ought to save everyone. They ought to be embedded in everything to try to save those that they think need saving. And it goes beyond that because it gets to where it is past generosity and simple empathy and becomes, dare I say, a nagging problem. And even worse in some context. And they just think that they have to. And it is a psychological phenomenon. So there is medical evidence and those who specialize in treatment of people who suffer from that. And there comes the delineation to what I really want to talk about, not the people who are truly suffering from the phenomenon medically, but for those, here it comes, coming a little closer actually, let me whisper it to you. When it is loved ones, family members that are purposefully orchestrating the issues that they're highlighting so that they may seem like the savior and come to the rescue all the time. Just me? Or have you seen what I'm talking about before? I am sure you have. I'm sure you have. If you're an honest broker, you would admit that you have. But hang on a second. I gotta go get some tea. Yeah, I'm back. First sip is always the good one. And yes, the sip must be heard on the first one, at least. So you get those flavors going. Anyway, I digress. But look, when the savior is a loved one, parent, sibling, or a close friend, it makes the obligation even more intense, right? It feels stronger because now they've crossed boundaries, knowingly or unknowingly. And in the case that I want to highlight, it's when it's knowingly, right? Insidious. It really is. And it also goes to gaslighting and all the other terms you can attach to it because it's intentional. And that's the difference. I think those that have the medically termed phenomenon are just genuinely wanting to help despite it being unsolicited, despite them often going out of their way and ignoring their own well being to do it. For them, it's genuine, but for our nefarious, and I really don't mean to laugh, but for our nefarious family members and um, so called friends who would do this, it's, and they see their intentions, I think, they see their intentions as acts of care and responsibility, especially in the case of parents, right? That parental attachment, and some parents just have them think or they feel that they have to cross those boundaries. And again, to them, it's not a big deal. But here's the issue. Here's the issue with that. When they do cross the line and you call them on it, right? You tell them that, okay, you're not interested in the point of view or with the direction they're pointing you in. For lack of a better way of saying it, they become butt hurt. And that perpetuates other issues, unseen issues, because, and I think that's part of the problem. And I wanted to close with that, but seeing that I broached it, I'll just say it here. Part of the problem is that there usually is an underlying issue for why people do this, both the ones with the psychological um, title and those that are using it nefariously. And it's cultural, it's either suppressing or acting out abuse of some kind, or and there is usually, and I want to be very delicate with that because it is a medical issue. There is usually something underlying, and that's what most things that we go through in life. That's what most things that we go through in life. There is an underlying issue, as in why we are wired the way we are, or do certain things that some would consider outside the norm. And like I said, there are usually some underlying issues, and I mentioned cultural narratives, like media highlights the hero as always coming to the rescue, and those things can imprint on those that are easily influenced, which brings me to self-esteem and validation, right? Hero complex folks tend to, they need to know that they're wanted, that they're necessary. And that validation is because of low self esteem. So the cultural narratives and social media tied into that low self esteem equates to the need for that validation, and doing, sadly, nefarious or unintentional hurtful acts to gain it. And I mentioned that they get upset when their efforts are rebuffed. And it's really harmful for young family members, not necessarily just children. Anything with children is harmful. Period. Stop. The end. So it's already harmful with children when there's this control, right? And there are several reasons for the control. One, they live under your roof. Two, you're probably providing their every need. I could go on, but I won't, right? Resort back to my opening for this segment. Zero on kids, okay? And then if they're now in their, what would it be? Their post teen years, and they're now um, young adults. There's the words I'm looking for, words. young adults, they're now young adults, and they still rely on you for some amount of support. And because of that support, and that is the carrot, right? That's the carrot in this equation. Because of some amount of support that is necessary from these entities, the victim, for lack of better word, is controlled. And often, because they're not exposed to any other truisms or truths, this control becomes their truth. And it is dangerous. It is sad. It is, here's the most interesting of all, that it is unnecessary, completely unnecessary. Because look, if your relationship with whomever it is relatively stable, I don't think there are any perfect relationships, right? Be they platonic, be they romantic. I don't think there are any perfect relationships. But let's say your relationship with your siblings, with your parents, with your loved ones, with your friends are stable. Even with the underlying issues under the surface, they're not so pronounced for those saviors to take advantage of them. What am I getting at by saying that? Again, this is part of why it's such a nefarious behavior, because they seek relationships that they think are troubled, or people that they think cannot handle their own issues. And robbing someone of that autonomy is becomes part of the issue, because they'll grow up, if they never get out of that, with self-esteem issues, which just perpetuates the issue. It's like a revolving door, right? It never ends. But I mean, the behavior just robs people of their own growth and their autonomy and their ability to discern and to make decisions, to think critically on their own. It's, and then you'd say, okay, Warren, what are you offering? And on the medical side, I'll defer to the medical folks, the professionals. All right. But that is one of what I would propose for those that are, dare I say, that the hero seeking um, perpetuators of this behavior. I would say seek professional help. Yes, indeed. But for the average person that is going through it or recognizes it, I would just offer that you, and I think some of this applies to the perpetrator too, and that is just reflect on your motivations. Are you doing it for the hero saving, triumphant applause and parade after, or are you doing it out of just the fact that you are wired that way? And even with wired that way, it brings me to this one. You have to understand that you have to create boundaries, okay? No is a complete sentence. A lot of us don't tend to embrace that or know it to be true, that no is a complete sentence. There are times when we should say it. And more importantly, there are people, usually loved ones, that we should say it to, but we don't. All right. But I'm here to tell you that to develop your own autonomy and your own sense of you, you have to learn how to say no. And then the perpetrator, you have to let go and let folks develop their autonomy, as I've been saying. Encourage that instead of exploiting it, encourage it. Start with leading questions or in the format of questions. Hey, have you thought about looking at thing X in these contexts? And let them go through the process. Not, hey, if I were you, I would do this. See, that approach is it even sounds in your face, right? Brash and harsh and intentional for the effect, but you get what I mean, right? Because you've seen it. You've seen it. And usually that's also part of that behavior, is that it is so abrasive and in your face, again, unsolicited, right? So it goes for the perpetrator and words, the victims. Look, in wrapping up, because I don't want to, I just wanted to hit the points, the highlights. I don't need to stretch it for stretching its sake. And with saying that, if you're still with me at this point, I appreciate you sticking around and giving me a listening ear. I appreciate your time. I know it's valuable, right? And it's the one of the few things we're in control of. So by giving me your time, I appreciate it, lending me some of your time. But in wrapping up, I can't hit boundaries enough. All right. We have to set boundaries. And then you say, Warren, but I've tried that and I've gotten pushback. And you will get pushback. There's some loved ones that wish pushback. They think the pushback is inherently permanent and it's just on that issue. And that's for another topic in another video. But why do we stretch things across issues? We never deal with the one that is right now, right here in our face. We always package them. Anyway, I digress. Boundaries, learning how to say no, and understanding that just pause, right? Pause, because I've often said that often we just need to shift our perspectives to see others' realities. And that requires that we just pause and reflect and look at, how did I get here? Did somebody do that to me and that's how I'm here? Or did I work hard, sort it out, tripped up, got up, avoided the ambushes, got over the obstacle, navigated at night, up and around? I mean, reflect. And if the answer is you did it alone, most of the time, because you're not alone and you shouldn't do everything alone, right? But if you did it alone most of the time and the results were favorable, and even when they weren't, you learned from them, that is the name of the game, okay? That is the name of the game. So if you are one of my viewers and you've been perpetuating the behavior, there's medical help and there are ways out, getting over it. I just gave you some, all right? So with that said, until our next conversation, try to apply those if you can and whenever you can, and you be good out there, and we'll talk again soon, all right? We'll see you.